4 years ago, we bought what we thought was our last residence in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. We were going to stay here 5 or 6 years and then move to someplace warm and sunny and nice. In this episode of the I Can't See You podcast, I'll tell you how COVID-19 changed that.
From Studio C, welcome to the I Can't See You podcast with David. He can't see, but he's got a lot to say and a face for radio.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 88 of the I Can't See You podcast. My name is David, at David Benj on all the socials. I really appreciate you joining me for today's episode, and I've got a good one. It's a pretty exciting announcement that I have, and I'll go over a few things, and I've kind of alluded to it over the last week or two, and it happened very quickly, but let me get to some updates first, and then we will get into it. And again, this is episode 88, and as I talked about in last week's episode, Dan and I had been texting back and forth, and he said, I know what episode 88 is going to be called. And of course, everyone knows, because I'm a hockey fan, 88, you don't have to say anything else. Everybody knows Eric Lindros, the NHL MVP back in the mid-90s, Hockey Hall of Famer. And, maybe because this is episode 88, I have to tell you, I do not feel like I'm at 100% today. And he played a lot of his career with some injuries, and especially the concussions that probably led to an early ending to his career. It certainly did as a Flyer, and he did play for a couple other teams after that. But this is the Big E episode, and boy, I miss watching him out on the ice and playing for the Flyers. That was some exciting times. And it's kind of ironic that I'm talking about Eric Lindros, because back in the early 90s, the Flyers tried to get him. They were trying to build a new building because they wanted to move to a new home. And that's what today's episode is about. And as I said last week and mentioned before I talked to Max, a couple of weeks ago, Jane got the word that she will not be going back into the office until sometime in 2021. It's my belief they probably won't go back until spring or summer of 2021. And again, that's just me speculating. I'm usually wrong, so don't go by what what I say. And I'll touch on that in a second. And when we heard that, when we moved into this apartment here back in 2016, in June of 2016. This was going to be the last apartment or last place that we lived in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. We lived in media. When Liz and I first got married, we lived in a townhouse in Brookhaven. So, and we both grew up in Wallingford, literally a mile away from where we are, where I'm talking to you today from Swarthmore. So this was going to be when we, our downsize, the kids were going to be moving out. This was going to be it. And then COVID happened, and Jane came back home because who wants to stay in New York City with how bad things were, especially back in March and April. It was just brutal there. So she came home and has been working remotely from our living room since, I want to say the 16th of March. She came home on the 14th, took the train home, got out of New York just in time, and has been working from here ever since. And it's been great that she's been able to work from here. And that is, I think, what a lot of businesses are finding out. If you can have people work remotely, why not? And it'll be interesting to see once the pandemic kind of works its way through first wave, second wave, and whatever, how many businesses allow their employees to primarily work from somewhere else remotely, whether it's from their house or a coffee shop or whatever. And the one issue has been with us, with Jane working from here. Jane is on a lot of calls during the day, Zoom meetings and things like that. Now, when she's on with her team, it's not crucial, but when she's on with clients, that's very important that, there's no other distractions and noise and things like that. So when we found out that Jane was going to be working here probably into 2021, at least a month or two, and who knows, we're speculating again, and things change so rapidly. So when we found that out, we thought, are we crazy to think that we should move into a house where there's maybe a little bit more room and a little bit of, I can have an office, Liz can have an office, or at least a place to do her what we thought was going to be teaching teaching remotely, and Jane to have a space where she can shut the door. You know, the way our apartment is set up, the living room, dining room, and kitchen, it's one big open area. When these apartments were built, they were not built that way, but the person who lived here last, or at least before she sold, took out the kitchen wall. And frankly, I think it's great. I like the way it's laid out. It just doesn't work for, for adults living here when a couple of them need to be on calls and, engage with somebody, through their computer, and video, with video. It's not like it's a phone call where you can get up and walk about and go into a bedroom and just talk. And if it is, that's obviously a no-brainer. So when Jane found out about that, Liz and I talked about it. We saw a house that was available for sale in Bryn Mawr, which isn't too far from here, probably about 8 or 10 miles. Wasn't close to Liz's school, but again, we thought she'd be teaching remotely. It wasn't close to Jacob's current work, but there was a Target just down the street. He works at Target close by, only about 2 miles away. But there was a Target down the street with a bus line that ran right to it from the end of the street of this house. And we thought, wow, this would be great. We can move in here. There is a bus on Lancaster Avenue, which was at one end of the block. At the other end of the block was the Norristown high-speed line. It's like I don't know, if you see like trams in Europe, it kind of looks like that. It's kind of, it's a cross between a train and a trolley. I don't know how else to explain it. It stops pretty frequently. I guess it looks more like a trolley than anything else, but, it goes fast. And it doesn't go along, it's along rail tracks, what look to be like rail tracks. I guess it's light rail. It's not, it's not like the regular commuter rail. So that was at the other end of the block. And I thought, wow, once everything is over and I'm getting out and about on my own, it literally was a 3-minute walk to the station for this thing. And if I needed to, about a half a mile away was the regional rail, SEPTA Regional Rail, which goes into Philadelphia, goes into Center City directly. And the Rosemont station was, like I said, about a half mile away. So we thought, well, this would be great. And again, as I said last week, the house just sucked. It was just horrible. There wasn't enough room. The basement was unusable. So even if we bought it, we couldn't fix it, to where we could put an office and, another TV area so people could be spread out. So it just wasn't, and there was a little bit of water in there. And we looked at it a day or two after a tropical storm went through. And so maybe not the best day or maybe the best day. But again, the house itself didn't work. And because of its address, they were asking a little bit of a premium. And we were disappointed, but it kind of started the ball rolling to think, maybe we should look around. And when we started looking, we thought, okay, we're going to look here and we're going to look there. And then we started to realize, wait a second, if we look in this location, meaning a place called Havertown, which we saw a couple places we were interested in, how's Jacob going to get to work? Because it wasn't near a Target and it wasn't near his current Target. So it just that wouldn't have worked. So instead of looking at them, we were interested in a couple, but it just wouldn't work. So we nixed them. We looked at a couple others over in Ridley Township, Folsom, Millmont Park area, which also looked very nice. Same issue, though. Not an easy way for Jacob to get to work, and it wasn't near another Target. Now, there was one that we would have looked at had it still been on the market that just looked magnificent inside. And and I don't know if I've mentioned it before. There's a place in Delaware County that opened, I think, in the 80s. It's called Nifty 50s. It's kind of set up like if you're familiar with Happy Days or things like that. It's basically a burger place where everything is freshly made. They have great milkshakes. It's awesome. We usually go there after we would go to, the Alt 104.5 free concerts. We would go there, especially on the ones where the shows were in the, mid-afternoon, and we would go there either, at dinner time or sometimes, if the shows ended a little bit later, 7, 8 o'clock, we'd still go there and grab dinner. And And we love going there. This one house was just down the street from it, so that would have been dangerous. And it was a little tiny house, but the inside had been done so nicely, and I showed it to Jane, and we're like, oh, we got to go see this place. And when I clicked on it again, it said pending, and then it was off the market by the time we even talked to the real estate agent. And that one may have worked because that was near a route that has a bus line that goes to a different target, also in Springfield. It's kind of weird. They're in Springfield, Delaware County, Pennsylvania. There are two targets, and they are about a mile and change away from one another, which is it seems kind of weird to me. Jacob works at one that's at the Springfield Mall, and then there's one that's just down Baltimore Pike from it, and it's at the corner of Baltimore Pike and Route 420. A bus goes right down there. So if we found something along there, that probably would have worked. But we kind of focused on where we are now and trying to find something in the Swarthmore area. And it turns out that there were two houses available literally just around the corner from us. Pardon me. Again, not 100% today. So we looked at one, and it was, it looked like the 1970s. Like, we walked in there, and it was, paneling everywhere, and it just, I just didn't like it. But at least we knew the layout of the house. So what had happened was this house and another house just down the street from it both went on the market the same day. I want to say August 6th. We looked at this one on August 6th, and again, we liked the layout. This house wouldn't have worked. Well, it would have worked because the basement was finished, at least partially finished, and we could have finished it more to make another room, most likely for a bedroom for Jacob. Because they're 3-bedroom houses, and but the third bedroom, I had flashbacks because it reminded me of my bedroom when I grew up. I grew up in a split-level house that had 3 bedrooms. My parents had, of course, the largest one. The next size was meant for guests. So, it showed me where I stood on the on the bedroom food chain. I was at the bottom. And maybe that was fine when I was a baby. But when I was growing up and needed a little more space, I wasn't too happy about it. And in the end, my parents built this big room on top of the house for me, and it was a huge room. It had an ensuite, so it had a nice shower in it. And so for the first 16 years of my life, I was in a little tiny room for the most part. And then so this third bedroom upstairs, it was actually even smaller than my initial bedroom at my house in Wallingford. And, we thought, which kid is they will kill each other not to have that room. What are we going to do? So, like I said, the basement, it was in most houses that haven't had them done. It's basically one wide open space, roughly 31 by 17. So it's a decent size. And so we looked at the one with all this paneling. Again, it looked like the 1970s. Maybe the guy worked at a paneling store. I don't know. So we looked at that on the 6th, and I spoke to the real estate agent later that day, and we were going back and forth with emails, and then we spoke, and I said to her, do we need to put an offer in? Because real estate is going boom. I mean, it's on the market, and then it's gone. It is just so hot right now. And as she explained, it's people moving out from Philadelphia, even moving out from New York, coming down here. Some of them keeping their apartments in New York, but just because they can work remotely or working from a house around here. Which again, when you can work remotely, you can work from anywhere. I mean, anywhere. The beach, foreign country, whatever. And that part is very enticing, at least to me, to think that you can run a business from anywhere. And that's my goal, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So we looked at this other house online, and we looked at the images, very updated, very nice, but the basement wasn't finished. So if we bought this house, the first thing we would have to do, in fact, we'd have to do it before we moved in because somebody wouldn't have a bedroom. and again, that someone is probably Jacob, because we thought that third bedroom, that little tiny room, is a perfect office. It would be perfect for Jane because it'd be upstairs. You can shut the door. She'd have a nice backdrop for when she's talking to clients. It's an inner room. It's only got one outside wall, which is, looking out onto the backyard, which is very nice. The backyard is outstanding. So going back and forth with my real estate agent, I said, listen, should we put an offer in before we even walk in there? They weren't allowing people to see this house until the weekend, which was the 8th and 9th. And we got on the schedule to see it sometime around noon or 12:30 on the 8th. And, we went back and forth. And the house that we looked at with all the paneling, where the 1970s were calling you home, that one was listed for $229. This one was listed for $220. And I said, what do we need to do to get this house? Because I think this is the one, as long as we can finish the basement. And we saw in the previous house how easy it would be to make a room in there. There's an outside entrance down at, in the back. So that part is nice. And I'll get into some of the other good things about moving into a house as opposed to living here in this condo. So we put an offer in at the price of the house that we looked at down the street. So $9,000 above asking price, we put the offer in on. We shortened the window for having the inspection, so it would be off the market for as little time as possible. Our real estate agent, Branka Deutsch, was able to get an inspection within 5 days. So, that was something that the sellers liked because, again, once you sign an agreement of sale, the house is off the market until the inspection goes through. And of course, then you have the inspections and I'll talk about that in a second. But, if we said no, because there might've been this issue or that issue, and maybe they wouldn't fix it and we didn't want to fix it because it was going to be expensive, whatever. So would only be off the market for a couple of days. And so we did that. And we said we would cover the first $500 of any kind of issue, whether it needs this or it needs that. And there are some small issues. A couple of the bricks need I forget what it's called, repointing. A couple of minor things. I think if you added everything up, every little tiny thing, maybe it's $1,000. And again, we're going to have to finish the basement, so we're going to have an electrician there to do work, and we're going to have other people there that can make these adjustments once we're in there. So we made the offer, they accepted, and then the next day we looked at the house, and we were happy with it. We, again, they had redone similar to what was done here with the kitchen and dining room. The kitchen, living room, and dining room are on the main floor, and there's also a powder room on the main floor and a very large coat closet. So what they had done when they redid this house, they took out the wall between the kitchen and the dining room. The kitchen wasn't really big enough to eat in to begin with. It was, maybe like a little cafe table for one or maybe two people, but not big enough. That's it. So, we love the kitchen and dining room area. It looked very nice. The dining room the dining area is in the back of the house, so has, floor to ceiling windows that look over the backyard again, which is very nice. And I'll talk more about that in a second. So, we were happy with it and we figured, okay, this is already done. Everything's done. The only thing we have to do is do the basement. And again, we have to do that to move in because, Jacob is going to need a room, and I'm going to, I need a closed off office so I can do this podcast and, have a little bit of quiet. And I've also talked about adding video, once I'm in a space that not only is a little more easy on the eyes, because again, I'm standing right now in front of my computer. 2 feet in front of me is a pegboard that has some hats on it, Again, I've talked about, at eye level on looking to my left, I see some Prego pasta sauce, some honey, some things like that. And when I look to my right, I see, I can't read the labels, but cans of something, looks like a thing of mayonnaise. I mean, it's just brutal. I mean, if I sit down, then I'm in an office. But, right now I feel like I'm in the supermarket, which I guess my dad would be happy about. So we were happy with it. And so things started to happen fast. Now, we were hoping that we could get in there before Liz started school. And she starts school, I want to say the 31st of August, figuring that she's going to be working remotely. Jane's going to be working remotely. I need a space. And, so we needed to get in there. So, not a lot of time elapses between, Liz having to teach and Jane having to work. Jane obviously, and at this point, that's the most important, that Jane has a space that is an office where, again, she can close the door. When she's on a phone call with her team, with other people on her team, not an issue. She can go in her bedroom and, shut the door. It's just, the bedroom is just not set up to do her bedroom is just not set up to do, anything with clients. So, it happened in, like I said, we looked at this house. We started looking on the first house we looked at was on August 5th. We either found out on August 3rd or August 4th that Jane was going to be, working here at least until, January of 2021. And again, most likely further on into 2021. And who knows, again, we're speculating that I've told her I didn't think she's going back until next summer, but, I'm usually wrong about most things. So, it is what it is. And that's our guess. So from that day when we thought, let's go look at this house in Bryn Mawr, till the time we put an offer in on a house, it was a week, not even a week. We did that on, we started looking actually went to a house on Wednesday and put in an offer in on Friday. And that's how quickly things are going. I mean, it is just, even the paneling house is now off the market. So it's just kind of crazy. Now, hopefully that happens. Pardon me. Hopefully that happens when we put this on the market. But it's not the same because people want to have a house. They want to be, and that's one of the issues that I've had here. I could go out and, I don't know if, when other people are coming, do they have masks on? Am I getting close to them? I can't tell. And so it'll be nice to be able to go outside without having to worry, hey, I'm going to walk into somebody that I don't know. I'm going to walk out the back door and I'm going to be outside at the house. and that, there's nobody going to be coming the other way down a hallway. It's either going to be Liz, Jacob, or Jane. So that part will be nice, and for the most part, other than running down to talk to the office manager during the day here, I don't leave the apartment. I don't take any trash out during the day. I usually do it late at night, 12, 1 o'clock, when I know there's nobody else. And at that time, I usually don't put a mask on because I usually don't run into anybody. Now, I'm sure on occasion I have, not during the pandemic, but I know one time I was taking the trash out around 12:30, and there was another guy. This was last summer. He said, "Oh, I thought I was the only one that took the trash out late at night." And I said, "No, I do it all the time too." And then I usually walk around because I know that, again, my issue is I don't want to walk into someone. And when I take the trash out, I don't take my cane with me. So, I'm always afraid that I'm going to walk into someone. So when you go out at that time of night, chances are pretty slim somebody else is going to be out and about. Now, again, this guy seemed younger. And again, I can't really tell. A good chunk of the folks that live here, probably about 50%, are older, meaning retired. They don't have a job to get up to go to do. And, and then there's a group of folks that have moved out of a city or that are, that don't have kids. I couldn't imagine having a kid grow up, living in a place like this, because there's just not a lot of place to run around. Now, in the summer, there's the pool out back, which our apartment, looks at, which is nice, but otherwise there's not really a good spot for a kid to grow up here. So that's one thing that I'm looking forward to. And of course, the main thing, and I told the condo board, we had a board meeting on Monday. I told them about the fact that we were moving, and they were kind of surprised because nobody knew. And again, you go back to August 1st, we didn't know. We didn't even think about it. And it wasn't, I always look at real estate. I still get stuff from when we moved in here from Zillow. And I just, it's just one of the things I like to do. I like to do that. I like to look at, logos. And again, I have very little vision, but I like to look at that. I like to make logos. I just made a logo, by the way, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, for an event that the Keystone chapter of the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania, what a mouthful, is doing a talent show. And I made the logo. It's a basic logo. And maybe once we finalize it, I'll put it up on the show notes page. But, it's just something I like doing. I shouldn't do it because it takes me forever to do anything that has a lot of stuff going on in it. If it's something basic like this one, it didn't take too long. But it's just one of the things I like doing. So looking at real estate, I'm always, when I get an email about real estate, I love looking at it. It's just, again, one of the things. I've been getting emails from, I talked a few episodes ago about, and again, we thought we were going to be in this condo and then we're going to move to where it's warm, whether it's Florida, Arizona, and more than likely it's not going to be either of those places. But again, we don't know. And who knows? Depending on how long things take to get back to normal, it, might not be ever at this point. We'd love to look, at the Mediterranean coast of Spain, Costa Blanca, maybe Costa del Sol, go into France, maybe even Italy. Again, along the Mediterranean, nice climate, warm, mild winters, so forth. Lack of storms. Obviously, every place has storms, but I've noticed, especially over the last couple of months, that, I kind of can tell when something's going to happen. And, I don't know if the psoriatic disease is getting worse with me or it's just changing, and, it is what it is. And, for now we're here and, we'll make the best of it and hoping for mild winters and not a lot of storms. So it's just hard to believe how quickly things went down. But for our sanity, one of the issues when Jane is on a client call in our living room, and it's lunchtime, you really can't make a lot of noise in the kitchen. And that is not my MO, because I bang things because I might be picking something up and don't see something else there. So I bang stuff into one another, whether it's glasses or a frying pan, if I'm making an omelet, whatever. So I am not quiet when I'm in the kitchen, making lunch or, even making my iced tea or whatever. So that became, if we had to talk, if Liz and I had to talk and she was on a client call, we had to go down to the bedroom. It just was, we were kind of stuck. So our thinking was, we'll move, Jane will have a space, I'll have a space, Liz will have a space. Well, what's funny is Liz's school, the Walden School, which we all assumed would be doing everything remotely, came out last week that they would be doing in person for preschool and first and second grade. Liz teaches preschool and kindergarten. And so we're like, wow, okay. Well, that's good, because if she's in school, that means they'll probably have extended day, which Liz always works extended day, and it's extra money. So that part is good. And then Friday night, the Chester County Health Department, whatever that's called, which for whatever reason, Delaware County, where we are, doesn't have their own. So we base everything off of what Chester County says. They recommended schools begin the year remotely And I'm like, okay, now what does that mean? And again, it's very tricky because as opposed to like the elementary school and middle school at Walden, preschool, one of the big things, especially, with something that's Montessori based, is to have that interaction with kids, with their peers. The older kids help the younger kids and so forth and so on. And it just, and I know that's, with any kind of learning, but, something that's Montessori based is that way. And, and there were families that had, flat out said, look, if you guys are remote, we're not signing up. And so we thought, okay, what does this mean? Maybe they don't need as many teachers. Who knows? So we didn't know what was going to happen there. And so we're like, okay, so we only need 2 spaces now if Liz is going back in. So we'll see how that works out. It is a little concerning because, again, that will mean she's in a classroom with, there's only going to be, I think they capped her classroom for capacity at 12 as opposed to, I think she's 21 usually. They've done all sorts of renovations to the building, with, plexiglass shields, tables that normally sat 4 kids now will only seat 2, and they'll be, if they're rectangular tables, one will be down one end, the long end, and then down the other end there'll be another kid, and then there's a big plastic shield in the middle, which was kind of interesting. I was in school with her the other day. She had to pick up. They've been saving boxes so we can pack stuff in to move. So we'll see how that goes. It's again, she's going to be in the thick of it. Like Jacob has been. Jacob, of course, at Target is a different story altogether because, all sorts of different people coming in each day, coming and going. So at least at the beginning, Liz won't need a dedicated space. And Liz was fine from the dining room table. It allowed her space to set up to teach where she was showing objects and doing things like that. So the dining table would have been fine for her, and that would have put her on the main level. Jane would be on the upper level, like I said, in the 1 bedroom, and then Studio B, as it will be known, will be in, of course, the basement since it begins with a B. So I'm looking forward to that, to having an actual just a office/studio where I can, if I want to add a green screen to do videos and whatnot, that'll be there. I'll have a proper setup. I won't be recording right on my computer. I'll have an actual microphone, which right now the desk that I'm on, because there's no other room in here, the desk that I'm on, there's not really room for both a microphone. I mean, the microphone could fit because it would be on a boom arm, but there's no room for a mixing board that I want, that'll have tactile buttons that I can actually feel and adjust and whatnot. And so I'm really looking forward to that because I don't know if you've noticed, sometimes the sound doesn't sound great. And I believe the settings are the same, but again, they're not tactile. I think, I don't usually touch them, in GarageBand where I record. So it'll be nice to be able to tweak something, that I can feel. It's just a matter of deciding which mixing board I want. And I've narrowed it down to probably, 2 different ones. So we'll see. Once I have it, I'll let you know, and I'll have a link to it so you can see what it looks like. Unfortunately, both of the ones that I'm looking at also have a touch screen. It's just a matter of figuring out how often I need to mess with that part of it. If I just have to do it once to set it up, that's fine. If I have to do it each time I record, that's going to be an issue because it's a touch screen and I can't feel it. It's just like working on the computer here. So I'm looking forward to having that. And of course, one of the main things, and when I told the board, I started to talk about this a minute ago, they said, what if we allowed you to grill here? Because that's been our biggest issue about moving here, is we can't grill. There's a policy against it, and I get it, that you can't grill on the balcony, as we found out when we had almost burned down our house with a grill fire, a year or two before we moved. So, had the fire gotten up into the eaves, it would have been something that would have been bad for the house. But, Liz was able to move it out enough, and that didn't happen. And this building is, primarily cement, but again, you're not allowed to grill here, and I get the reason why. Another thing that will be nice, right now we don't have a washer and dryer in our unit. They're not permitted. There's a laundry room on each floor. So during normal times, it's okay. Again, not great, because sometimes somebody will put something in a washer that, if we're the next ones to use it, sometimes our clothes will come out with, either, somebody left a tissue in it or whatever. There's, I wear black T-shirts most of the time, and, you always see something on there, and at least we'll have a little more control over that, as well as doing wash at odd hours. There are quiet hours that you can't use the laundry room after 11. Sometimes Liz, when we were at the house, would put something in, at 11, and then I would either move it to the dryer or hang it up, if it's something that we were going to, let air dry. So, so we'll be able to do that. So we're looking forward to that. And another thing that we're looking forward to, and it's something that I don't know if it's because of the pandemic or if it's because of all the TikToks Jane watches with dogs in them, but we have really missed over the last year or so, we have really missed having a dog. We had a dog when the kids were little. His name was Zamboni, so that should tell you what kind of what kind of hockey fans we were, at least. Maybe, again, as my vision has faded away, I watch a lot less because the glare off the screen is just brutal. So we're probably, if we can, we're probably going to get a dog. We'd like another golden. We think the yard is big enough for a golden. It's fenced in already. An actual fence, not an invisible fence. And the funny thing about the backyard, and I'll get back to the dog in a second. The funny thing about the backyard, where the house is located, backs up to what used to be a small farm. And when I was a kid, my mom and I used to go over there to get corn, and I guess she also got some other things. I didn't eat the other things, so it didn't matter to me. I always wanted to get corn, which they grew there. And so we now, our backyard backs up to that, which is very cool. Anybody in Delaware County may remember, it was called Perone's, and I believe the family still owns it. So hopefully I'll get to see some of them out there, and I can convince them to start growing some corn again, because that would be awesome. Because I loved that as a kid, and I loved going over there and getting that. And now that I eat so many more veggies and fruits, anything else they would grow would be great. So we thought, back to the dog, we thought, okay, we can get a dog, but everybody, it seems, wants a dog. So to find something, we've applied for a couple of different places, figuring that, we'll be in the house sometime in October. So, we haven't heard back because so many places, everybody's wanting a dog. And I think it would be great. Jane would be excited for it. And again, the problem there is, if we get a dog, Jane will be back in the office in January because that's just how things work out for us sometimes. And I'm hoping it's not that soon that she goes back. I heard on the news yesterday, a company that has offices in Washington and New York were telling their employees that if they take public transportation, they should self-quarantine for 14 days before coming into the office. If they were going to work from the office, they were going to open the office up, but walk in, drive in, bike in. Do not take public transport, because then you got to quarantine before you come back to the office. And I think that's funny, because that's Jane's, primary mode of transport in New York is public transit, and the subway primarily, because especially once she is back in her apartment there and her company is moving to One World Trade, which will now be, it's a shame because it would have been in walking distance to her old apartment. But it's, probably 2 or 3 miles. Yeah, she could walk it, but that's a long walk. So it'll be interesting to see. So, it's it's exciting for us because, we're looking forward to having a little bit more space. And again, the house that we're moving into, if we didn't finish the basement, is actually size-wise comparable to what we have here. It's just the fact that they have the basement that can be taken care of and made into a couple of rooms that would add an additional almost 600 square feet of living space. And that's the difference. That would be the difference between that place and this apartment. And so, it's just something that we're looking forward to. I don't know that Jacob's looking forward to it as much as Jane is. Liz and I are certainly looking forward to it. And I think Jacob will be really on board once we get a grill, which will be the first purchase that we make for that, because grilling was something that we did. If Liz could get to the grill in the winter, we grilled whatever the protein was we were having. And sometimes not even when when it wasn't protein, when, somebody had, zucchini, and I know in the winter it's not as, available as it is obviously in the summer. But we loved grilling zucchini, and did that almost every day, when we were in media. And so we're looking forward to that. So it's, I'm looking forward to having a little bit more space. The Studio B that I'll be moving into, probably about 10 feet by 10 feet square, maybe a little bit larger. Again, once we get in there, we'll see. The kids will have similar sized bedrooms. Our bedroom will be smaller. We won't have an ensuite, which will feel a little weird after all the time that we've had an ensuite here and had one in media. So that'll be a little different, to go out in the hallway to, get a shower or use the bathroom. But it was we thought it was a small trade-off, and we'll see how it goes. So that's what I have for this week. And again, I'll keep you posted on that. And one of the things, maybe I'll just touch on briefly, actually, to finish up the thoughts. There's a lot of forms that you have to fill out when you buy a house, obviously. And now especially there are more forms because there are COVID forms that you have to fill out for each house that you look at. Now, they're not 100% accessible. For example, if my real estate agent sent me something and I was at home, it was something that she sent to at night, and I saw it on the computer, the form wasn't accessible to me. And so if I did want to read it, I would have to open it up on my phone. And even on my phone, some of the forms, instead of just reading the entire thing, it would say row 1, column 2. And then it would say what it said in that column. And then it would go to row 2, column 1, and it would say what's in there. So it's hard to keep track of, it doesn't flow easily. So that was a little disappointing. And if I did it on my computer, if Liz were standing here behind me, if she was behind me and she'd say, okay, there's this, they're marked by little, almost like those things, like those tabs when you have to sign a paper document that the accountant or the attorney would put, like all the different spots you have to sign that has an arrow. And then once you sign it, you pull the sticky off and you go to the next one. So there's something similar to that. I think the service is called DocuSign or something like that. So it was kind of tough because sometimes I would miss, where I had to initial. And, then I'd have to go back to the beginning. And, so more times than not, Liz was, watching and saying, okay, there's one on the right, move the mouse down. So that was a little disappointing. And then one of the COVID forms I tried to do on my phone before we went into a house, and it was just I had to give my phone to Liz, and we turned off voiceover, and she filled it out pretty quick. But it was one that was very disjointed because of the row 1, column 2, row 2, column 1, then column 2, column 3. So for me it was just hard to and then there'd be one word because it'd be like a header on a column and or whatever, and to get the gist of it, it was just so hard to do. So I was kind of disappointed in that because it wasn't as accessible as I thought it could be. And I did need, like I said, if I was doing it on my computer, which as I've mentioned before, I don't use VoiceOver on. I usually either zoom in or highlight a section and then have it read to me. These documents, you couldn't do that. You could zoom in, but you couldn't have them read. And that was, lately, I've got to have just about everything. I've got to listen to everything because I can't zoom in and read a good deal of information. I could zoom in and read a couple words, maybe a sentence, but and you might have noticed last week when I was doing my interview with Max, I had to read the name of his book, and it was hard for me to do. And I know it sounded like it the one time that I did read it. For whatever reason, I just couldn't put it to memory. So that was disappointing. And again, talking about Max, if you want to check out his new book, ican'tseeyou.com/Max will take you to that. I do appreciate you listening to the Big E episode of the I Can't See You podcast. That is Eric Lindros episode number 88. Thanks for listening. I hope you're staying safe. And remember, keep in touch on all the socials. I just hit 200 followers on Instagram. And I think that's pretty good for a guy who's 55 and, doesn't look good in a bikini. I know if you're a girl in your mid-20s and you put on a bikini, you can get a lot of followers, but I'm not that. Not even close. So as it says in the beginning of this show, it's got a face for radio. And so I do appreciate you. If you haven't followed me on Instagram, please, ican'tseeyou.com is where you'll find me most of the times on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. It's, Instagram.com/DavidBenge, Twitter.com/DavidBenge, Facebook.com/DavidBenge, YouTube.com/DavidBenge. You get the idea. Check me out on LinkedIn as well. Connect with me there as well. Usually I don't post a lot over there, but I do put the podcast up there. But again, I do appreciate you listening to this episode. Please stay safe, keep washing your hands, and I will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the I Can't See You podcast. Follow David on Twitter. He is at David Benge.